being here. Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Meeta Goel, and I'm the Dean of Institutional Effectiveness Research, Planning, and the Library at Antelope Valley College, and I also teach research methods courses at CSU Bakersfield, and they've got me developing an online/blended version of the course this summer, and the focus is using applying the quality matters rubric. So what I'm going to talk with you about today is even more important to me. Improving learning inside and outside the classroom for students. And I will touch on student engagement briefly before going on to what we did with institutional learning outcomes and student engagement data, then pathways and student engagement data, and institutional effectiveness in general. And I'll share briefly the visualizations we did using Tableau, and hopefully we'll have enough time for discussion. So to me, the federal government and the states tend to emphasize lagging indicators for metrics, and this is nothing new, leading and lagging indicators. However, the leading indicators are things like attendance, whether students are learning the things that we promise they're going to be learning at our institutions, our institutional learning outcomes, for example, that they come out with those skills when they leave us. And so I think these leading indicators are really more important to, that's what we should be looking at more. As far as our funding, our performance, we should be evaluated on them. And so CESI data, Community College Survey of Student Engagement, and SENSE, Survey of Entering Student Engagement, are two such pieces of data that are, or sources that can be used as leading indicators. So you can make changes. Faculty, staff can adjust things as needed for students as we go. I meant to, let me back up just 1 second. Phillips and Horowitz, I started with that on here. And I love their book, Creating a Data-Informed Culture in Community Colleges, because they not only talk about these leading and lagging indicators, they talk about three models as far as organizational effectiveness. And the first model is the institution doesn't really appreciate data that much, not using it very well. And that's where we were at the college that I'm at, Antelope Valley College, when I got there. Data was in drawers. If you were lucky, it was in an Excel spreadsheet, even though we had DataTel and /Banner. The second model is where there's not critical mass around using data for decision making. And then the third model is you have a lot of data. You have BI tools like we do, and you're drowning in data, and yet you still have to get people collaborating and using it for improvement. So ABC did the CESI in 2008. That was the baseline. I got there in 2013, and we did it again, and then in 2016. And the dark green is ABC from 28, 14, 16. We went up across all 5 benchmarks of the CESI, and the yellow is the CESI cohort of large colleges, and we were above them as well by 2016. And one of the things that changed that was significant for us is our advisor / counseling student ratio went from 1,002 to 1 3 years ago to 479 to 1. So more students had someone that was taking care of their ed plan and listening to them. And this difference was also seen as far as part-time versus full-time students. And that's an important thing because part-time students at two-year schools, as you know, tend to be less on campus, less engaged historically. And the survey of entering student engagement, that was our baseline that we did effort in 2016, and we're the first bar, and you can see that we didn't do as well. There's 6 benchmarks for SENSE,
And the high expectations and the effective track to college readiness, we did a little better, but all the rest, lots of room for improvement. So how you look at these data is the two that we're high on, you don't say, we're good enough. That's where you start looking at the top performing colleges for SESI and SENS, and you say, we're gonna aim higher for the next time around and implement strategies, obviously. So lots of work sessions went on between 2014 and current day. And one of the things I had to do, because they were in the paper stage back in 13, 14, I gave them all the means. Faculty and staff at opening day gave them means for every item. And then they picked out, this is what I'm gonna do differently. I don't really interact with my students outside the classroom very much. I'm gonna do this differently for fall 15 and onward. So, and that's how our data how we improved by the 2016 administration. So as far as ILOs, these are 4 ILOs that they were relatively new, and we developed a crosswalk between SESI items and these 4 ILOs, and they're pretty typical. We based them on best practices out there. And so the first, let me take you here, because I think it can take you to most of the stuff. So on our website, on the IERP page, if you click on SESI, you can go to, and the pathways stuff is here as well, because I probably won't have time to go to those links. So here are the tableau. My research analyst, Dr. DePlazis, has taken all the things that SESI and SENS have. They have a plethora of resources where they've laid out for, not for ILOs, that we customized SESI for, but for pathways, for SENS and SESI. They have a methodology, and they have the items for, getting them on the path, assuming you have the path, getting them on the path, keeping them there, and ensuring that they're learning. And so the demographics come first, but here's the crosswalk I talked about. And with the SESI items on the right. And here's one version for the communication ILO for the SESI data. So the very first item is worked on a paper or project that required integrating ideas or information on various sources. So that's sort of item our students reported that things were going pretty well. And then if I scroll down, there'll be things about items 4G, worked with classmates outside of class, not so good. And so I will get out of that. But there's lots there if you wish to explore further. Probably should have said all. So the Pathways Toolkit is there. Some of these things are hard to find on the SESI and SENS website, so I put them there in the PowerPoint. And the SESI and Pathways methodologies there. Same goes for SENS. They have a toolkit for the items and each type of path. And so our next steps are to use these data more fully and to re-administer both of them during the 2019 calendar year. You get a 20% discount if you do both in the same year. And so some of the things that we haven't gotten to as well are things like this faculty predictions exercise or the student services staff predictions, where you have these data are catalysts for conversations on campus. And so you give them these exercises and you say, what do you think our students said with respect to advising, which was not very good for us, what they said. And that they can't meet with advisors and things like that. And you saw that our ratio went down. And so they fill out these sheets, and then you give them the actual data on what the students said, as far as how important advising was to them, how satisfied they were with it, and how much, how much they needed it, how important it was. And so what else? Data narrative exercise is a good one. The piece that I've used of this is the overall satisfaction for SESI. There are 3 items that reflect that students would recommend your institution to others, they're overall satisfied with it, and you come up with an index of student satisfaction. So I've been using that, but there are many others that you can use, and pick an item, if it's advising, for example, and you decide, what are we doing currently? What's our current state for advising/counseling? And what are we going to do between now and the next time we administer this instrument to improve things with that? And so the data narrative helps you map that out. College Connections Inventory helps you dig deeper into the why, but my favorite are focus groups, and they've been mentioned in quite a few sessions today. I was so pleased to hear that, because I think it's an underutilized tool. Next door, they were talking about the incarcerated group and using focus groups, and in here earlier too, and to get at that why. Because you have surveys and people check off things, but you don't have a full understanding of what's going on. And the course feedback form for each of them is really great. It describes certain things that are best practices at institutions and helps you look at how you are doing with those. So one area that we have not gotten to at all is the faculty version. That's this, I don't know how to say that, SESI. And we have not gotten to look at that data very much, but it does, at initial glance, it does look like it's not, there is a gap there. And so we need to do that. We've done a lot considering how much time all this takes. And as I mentioned, we want to re-administer. So now for some discussion. Have any of you used the SENS? Because that's 2-year, 4-year, or SESI? No. Well, any other questions then? Thank you.